headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Time to say a very good morning to Mr. Richard Tice. Richard, how the day?
A very good morning. I'm very well, and it is a bright and cheery day out there. But also, I'm feeling bright.
Good,
because actually, as a Londoner, I was just delighted by the news that finally, actually, I'll give credit where credit is due, and I haven't given much credit to Sadiq Khan.
He's not worthy of much credit, to be honest.
But here, actually, finally, the penny has dropped with him.
Yes,
that Cressida Dick was not up to the job.
Yeah,
and essentially. He basically pushed her. He fired her.
But as many people are asking this morning, how's it taken this long for him to work out that she couldn't do what she was charged with?
It's a really good question. It's taken way too long. I mean, it's only a few months ago that Khan, Priti Patel and the Prime Minister reappointed her, re-extended her contract for another 2 years with the glowing reference that she was the continuity candidate.
Yes.
Well, no surprise that actually that continuity turned out not to be good enough for a whole raft of reasons. I actually think that in the spirit of the glass is half full, not half empty, and the spirit of optimism, we should look forwards and not sort of rake over the charge sheet of failures. We know what those are.
Yes.
They're long. It's taken far too long to hold her to account.
Right.
But the big question now, Mike, is who's going to replace her? And I do think this is a watershed moment.
It is.
Not just for the Met Police, but also for policing and leadership in policing across the whole country. And the first thing to happen is that there shouldn't be a rush to replace her. She said that she'll stay until there's a replacement. This is a moment, it's a really big opportunity for the leadership of this country to step back, to reflect on the failure of policing in general across the country, remembering that it's only about 6% of crimes now end up with someone being actually charged, let alone convicted.
Yeah.
That's wholly unacceptable. You've got to say, right, what is it that we need to change? And in my view, Mike, I don't think that the buck stops just with Cressida Dick.
Yeah.
And the idea that you should rush to a replacement, and if you look at the newspapers, they're all talking about some of the sort of the deputies and assistant commissioners in the Met. No, that's totally unimaginative. I think that would sell us completely short in the status quo. Actually, I don't think any of those people should be on the potential candidate list. I think this is a moment to say, right, let's look outside the police, not just outside the Met
What, you mean
Police.
actually go for somebody who's never been a police officer?
I would go for someone who'd never been a police officer. For example, a senior officer from the armed forces, whether current or recently retired, I think would have the skills, the understanding, and the motivational techniques to come in and, frankly, to shake the tree and to sort it out.
Yeah.
And not one person can do it. They need to bring in a team. And I think this is a really, really big opportunity. And if the leadership does the right thing, if Khan and Priti Patel do the right thing, it's an exciting opportunity. Press the reset button on behalf of Londoners and citizens around the country and say, right, we accept things are not good enough. We accept things have gone wrong. Let's embark upon some real change. Because, you look at the armed forces, isn't it interesting? Whenever there's a crisis in this country, regarding things like logistics, rolling out the vaccines, helping sort out the shortage of fuel last autumn, where does the government go? Do they go to their existing departments, or do they go to the armed forces? They always end up going for the armed forces to help sort things out.
Right.
And this is a moment, I believe, where high-quality leadership, and there is some fantastic leadership in the armed forces, where it's all about teamwork, it's all about discipline, it's all about working together but getting results. And that for me is why I don't think this appointment should be rushed. Just calm heads, step back, think about it, really look around.
But of course, those who would be critical of the decision by Sadiq Khan to kind of put her under pressure, because when he said the other day, she's going to have a few days and maybe a couple of weeks to come up with a plan, I didn't really believe that he was. I thought he was just bluffing. I didn't think he would actually do anything. She's decided to resign. There are those who say, well, she didn't really fire her, she resigned. Well, it doesn't really matter which way around that happened. But at the end of the day, people will say, isn't it the fault of Sadiq Khan and Priti Patel and even Boris Johnson that the Metropolitan Police has been run like this, and it's their fault, and whoever they replace her with will be in the same boat?
Look, I think the bottom line is they took too long to hold her to account, and ultimately it was Sadiq Khan that held her to account. Yes, happy to agree that. And the charge sheet, as I say, was long and in many senses shocking. But we are where we are, and I think you've got to say, look, this is the moment when you've actually got to accept, look, leaders have to be held to account. In the same way that we hold the Prime Minister to account for what goes on in Number 10 and in government, in the same way that Sir Keir Starmer, I don't think he's afraid of being held to account for his performance when he was at the CPS overall, and I'm sure some things went well and some things went badly. That's what leading a big organisation is all about. But leaders have to be held to account. They have to have the courage to put their hand up and say, we got this wrong. I'm sorry, we're learning from it, we won't do it again. And eventually, if you keep doing things wrong, you have to pay the ultimate price.
Yes, and she kept getting it wrong, did she not, for a very long time. In fact, ever since really she was in.
Yes.
I mean, you chart back and you say we don't want to go over the old ground, and we don't, specifically. However, almost from day one, it was a disaster.
It's a long charge sheet of failure. But, I come from the world of business, and in business, if you're the CEO or the chairman of a big business, then you get some things wrong, and your shareholders and your board of directors will put up with this and that. But ultimately, if you keep getting things wrong, you keep making mistakes, then you will be held accountable and you will be fired.
And presumably you also have to bring people in that you can, one, trust, and two, rely upon, to make sure that if you are trying to change the culture of something, they're going to do it for you.
That's
which
right.
clearly hasn't happened. So nobody was doing what she was asking them to do, presumably.
And that's why I don't think there is a real cultural issue. And the report into what went on in Charing Cross Police Station, I just don't think that's an isolated incident of 14 people.
No.
And I'm afraid...
I also think that's a national problem as well.
Well, and I think the real issue is that there is a sense of cover-up and denial, certainly across the Met, quite possibly culturally across many police forces. And I listened earlier to the chairman of the Police Federation, Ken Marshall, and I'm afraid I disagree with him. I think that his support for Cressida Dick actually shows that there's a lack of willingness in the police, in the Met, for people to be held to account. And I just don't think that's good enough.
No.
I just think things have deteriorated to such an extent. Look, we all pay our taxes, and all of us in our lives, in our jobs, we all get held to account to perform, to do a good job. And I think that it's right in the leadership of all public sector departments and divisions, and in this case, the police. And the police is, trust in police has absolutely collapsed, not just in London, but across the whole country.
Well, the other thing that I'm hopeful about concerning this is that perhaps this will also be a sort of clarion call for all public sector areas where seemingly not doing a very good job not only results in you not being fired, but results in you being promoted. I mean, look at the way that all these departments are being run, where we're told that in the National Department of Health, something like 1 in 4 people is actually at work currently in an office, right? Most of them working from home. We know the DVLA is completely and utterly useless. Hardly anybody actually bothers going to work. I think the only place that's actually operating efficiently, much to my chagrin, is the tax department, HMRC, which doesn't seem to ever take their foot off the gas. But I mean, I was telling this story the other day. I drive into work. I didn't today. My car's parked in a car park, but I drive into work coming in from sort of, Canary Wharf way. I was pulled over by a sort of spot police check. There were about 30 police officers down a side road looking at people's cars. Now, I'm sure that that's probably worthwhile, but it seemed to me to be an awful lot of people when they surely could have done it with 5 or 10. And the questions were such as, is this your car? Do you have insurance? Can I see your licence? Where are you going? I'm kind of going, what the hell are they doing here?
I couldn't agree more. I think it is a question of priorities, and I've seen similar things. And I think accountability is absolutely key. For example, in the health service, recently they had a change of leadership when Sir Simon Stevens left. They had the opportunity to bring in someone from the outside. They didn't. They appointed an insider, Amanda Pritchard. And I'm afraid, here we are, a couple of months later, and the Health Secretary stands up in the House of Commons and says, we're pouring in billions and billions of pounds of more money, and the result will be, over the next couple of years, waiting lists will double to even higher record levels, 10, 12, 30 million. We're all losing count. I mean, that's not accountability. That's not performance.
And then 2 days later, they retracted that rather miserable target anyway and said, actually, it's going to be even worse than we said it was going to be. And we're actually not going to even think about reducing numbers until about 2025, 3 years hence.
And that's why this is such a moment, such a potential watershed. If the leadership of the Home Secretary, if the Mayor of London and the Prime Minister, if they have the courage to step up and just say, right, let's just pause, let's use this. This is a moment of accountability. And I will repeat, many listeners, we've all been very critical of the Mayor of London, but at this moment, the right thing has happened. Forget how it's happened and who made what phone call. Frankly, I don't care.
I mean,
the result is the right result. This is the moment. Step back, look carefully, look outside the box, think boldly, think ambitiously.
Yeah.
Let's do something different to get change. If you're not prepared to try something different, Mike, you'll never get change. And not only is it for the Met Police, but it's for policing up and down the country.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't just want another half-decent chief constable from elsewhere in the country being parachuted into the Met.
And promoted up the ladder.
Yeah. No.
If I'm not mistaken, are they still not in special measures in the Manchester police area?
I believe they're either still in or just coming out of it. I find if I'm going to be talking about Greater Manchester and the mayor up there on Sunday about something else.
Right.
But I think, look, if you've got a good chief constable somewhere else, leave them in post doing a good job. Bring someone else in. But this is that watershed moment, and if that was done and if that worked, it's then the moment to say, actually, we should be looking at doing that across rafts of the public sector. Bring in great people, successful people from another walk of life who haven't been in the public sector to come in, shake the tree, bring in some great people and sort things out and get some better performance. Because, we're paying the highest taxes we've paid for 70 years.
Unbelievable.
Look, many people would say, well, I don't mind that as long as I'm getting the greatest performance for 70 years. But frankly, if we're going to get worse and worse performance, more and more people say,
we're not.
What am I paying my taxes for?
Absolutely.
And that's why it's such a
And you know what
watershed
I've also seen? I wanted to bring this up with you. Martin Lewis, I don't know if you saw this morning, has put out a tweet in which he explains that the 1.25 or the 1.25 rise in national insurance is actually an awful lot more than that once you amortise it sort of over whatever period of time you're paying it and over a specific amount of money that you're making. It's actually more like a 10% increase in your taxes.
Correct. It's because it's a 10% increase in the amount of national insurance that is paid.
Right.
And of course, it's not just you, the employee, that's paying.
No, it's the employer.
It's the employer as well.
So if you're somebody like me who has a company and who also has employees, I'm paying 2.5%.
Yes, correct.
Right.
And that's how you end up with this sum of 12 billion quid. And if you're just going to pour it into a huge hole, a massive bucket with no demand
which
for
is not going to result in
performance.
anything.
Well, again, I think if people knew that would result in radical change, but the only change we're getting is that waiting lists are growing from 5 or 6 million to about 12 or 14 million. Let's remember, when the Tories took charge back in 2010, the waiting lists were not 4 million, they weren't 3 million, they were just over 2 million. So even pre-pandemic, they'd gone from just over 2 million to around about 4+ million. So, that's a pretty catastrophic rise, and then they're soaring ever since. And yet more and more money is being poured in. And here's the rub. Lots of people will say in the House, it just needs more money. No.
Look,
sorry.
It's exactly what it doesn't need.
The truth is that actually the amount of money per capita, per head, that the NHS gets is very similar to the European average. It's similar to the OECD average. It's not a lack of money. It's a lack of performance. It's too many managers. It's not enough doctors. You look at the ratios, the number of beds or nurses or doctors per 100,000, we're way below the European average.
But
yet we invest the same, give or take the average.
But it's also a failure of management. It's a failure of administration. I mean, we were talking about dentists yesterday. There's 40 million people apparently in this country waiting for a dental appointment. And most dentists are now basically saying, we don't even bother with the NHS anymore. We just don't do the work because it's not worthwhile.
And when you've got that lack of confidence, whether it's in dentistry or bringing it back to policing, you've got situations, and we all know it, where actually people just... If a crime happens, you almost say, well, I'll get a crime reference number, but that's it. I don't expect anything else to happen. I saw it recently with a situation, which I think I mentioned before, where, we had the CCTV footage.
Yeah.
We gave it to the police, and sure enough, nothing happened, nothing will happen. They actually know who's done it.
Yeah.
It's just too embarrassing. They're a bit concerned that it might cause issues if they go and actually chase them up. It's just not good enough.
No, it really isn't.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.